The boy who didn't know how to shudder. There once was a certain father who had 2 sons. The elder boy, sensible and responsible, and he would do anything his father wanted to very well. The younger boy, though, well, he wasn't very clever at all. He didn't know what to do. He didn't even know how to shudder. For instance, when his older brother was asked to go on a task and he had to go past the churchyard, he would say to his father, I'd rather not, it makes me shiver and shake and shudder. And when they were listening round a fire to stories which were a little frightening, the boy, the older boy, and all the people of the village would shiver and shake and shudder and say, oh, that's a frightening story. And the boy, he sat there and he looked and he thought, what is this shuddering? What is this shivering? What is the shaking? I don't know. I wish I could learn. Well, his father grew impatient with this, and his older brother laughed. His father said, you've got to learn to shiver and shake and shudder. It will get you into trouble if you don't. And his brother said, learn how to shiver, shake and shudder if you wish, but that's not going to get bread on the table or a roof over your head. Learn something that's going to give you a skill. Well, a skill isn't a shake and a shudder a skill, said the young boy. No, it's not. Well, the father spoke about this in desperation, and the sexton heard about it and came round from the church and said, I think I know how to get him to shudder. Leave him with me. I'll take him to the church. I'll show him the way. And he took the boy off and told him that he was going to ring the bells. And they rang the bells in the evening for 2 nights. And then on the 3rd night, the sexton said, tonight we're going to play ringing the bells at midnight. And the boy was really thrilled. And they went along to the church, up the tower, and into the ringing box at the top. And he started to ring the bells. The sexton had disappeared around a corner and came back out dressed in a white sheet. And the boy looked, and the sheet said, whoa! And the boy said, who are you? Whoa! Said the white spectre. Listen, I said, who are you? I'll tell you one more time. If you don't tell me who you are, I'll push you down the stairs. He didn't have time. The ghostly sexton didn't have time to make his noise before the boy had walked across and pushed him down the stairs. And he tumbled down to the bottom of the stairs, where he lay groaning with a broken leg. And then the boy went home and told the sexton's wife, when she asked him, that the sexton was lying at the bottom of the stairs with a broken leg.
The wife went and saw the sexton with his broken leg and brought him home, and then she grabbed the youth and dragged him back to his father and made a dreadful scene. The father was so disappointed. He was so embarrassed by what his son had done. He said, you have learnt nothing. I disown you. You are to go out of this house and you are to learn to make your way in this world. He said, I don't care what you learn, but you have to learn a skill to earn money, to earn bread for this house, and don't come back until you have. And the son said, well, I just want to learn to shudder. The father said, I don't care what you learn, but you must make your way. I will give you 50 tailors on the condition that you tell no one where you are from and you tell no one whose son you are. And the youth agreed, and he took the 50 thalers, and off he went on his way. And the whole time he walked, he complained to himself, I wish I knew how to shudder. If only I could shudder, I could make my way. Why can't I learn to shudder? And as he marched along, a wanderer came walking along beside him and listened to his moaning and whinging. And as they came to the top of the hill, he said to him, So you want to learn to shudder? He said, I will show you someone that can teach you how to shudder. And if in the morning you've learnt to shudder, well then you can pay me some money. The boy said, look, if you can teach me how to shudder, I'll pay you 50 thalers. And so the man pointed down the road to where 7 bodies were swinging, 7 corpses on the gallows. And he said to him, down there you will find 7 men who married the rope maker's daughter. Spend the night with them and they will show you how to shudder. And I'll be back in the morning for my 50 talents. And so the boy went down, he looked at the bodies, and he set up a fire and he spoke to them and he said, well, I hope you can teach me how to shudder, because no one else seems to know. And as the night grew on, the wind got colder and the bodies began to sway in the breeze. And he said to them, you look cold up there and you're not speaking to me. Come down here and warm yourselves. But of course the bodies didn't move. So he climbed up and he undid the ropes and sat them around the fire with him. And of course they still didn't speak to him. He stoked the fire to warm them further, but then their feet and their clothes began to smoke and smoulder. And he said, you're as foolish as I am if you don't move away from the fire. And of course the bodies didn't speak, and very soon their clothes caught fire. So quickly he put them out and said, you're useless, you're as stupid as I am. And he hung them back up on the gallows. And he curled up and went to sleep by the fire. And that next morning, the wanderer came back down, and he saw the youth, and he said, well, have you learnt to shudder? And he said, but these 7 men are useless. They're more foolish than I am. They even caught fire while they were warming themselves, but I certainly didn't learn how to shudder. So the man knew that it was no help at all, and he could not expect to earn his money. And off he went, thinking, I've never met such a strange fellow. So the youth got up and walked on and kept on his merry way, whinging and complaining. No one can teach me how to shudder. What is it to shudder? Oh, if only I could shudder. Until a wagoner came up behind him and listened to him. And he said to the youth, he said, come with me, young man. I'll take you to an innkeeper who will teach you how to shudder. Night time's nearly here and we need to find somewhere to stay. So he took him along to the local innkeeper. And when they went in, the young man said to the innkeeper, can you show me somewhere, somehow, I can learn to shudder? Oh, and the innkeeper's eyes lit up and he said, ah, yes, I can. Well, there's this place. And his wife interrupted and said, please don't. Look at the boy. He's got beautiful eyes. Don't send him the way of so many others. The innkeeper said, hush, woman. And he told the youth about the local haunted castle and how the king had promised that anyone that could spend 3 nights in the castle could marry his daughter. But it was haunted. The youth said, right, well, this is what I'm going to do. And the next morning off he set to meet the king. And the king looked at the young man, and he was pleasing to the eye. And the youth said, I would like to spend 3 nights in your castle because I want to learn to shudder. and I'm told I will learn if I go to the castle." And because the king liked the look of the boy, he agreed that he could stay in the castle. And he agreed to give him 3 things he could take with him. But they couldn't be anything alive. So the youth thought, and he said, "I'd like a fire and a lathe and a knife with a chopping board." And so the king agreed. And off he went to the castle.
And the youth went into the castle, and he took his fire and he put it in the hearth and stoked it up with lots of wood, and he sat back on his chopping board and he thought, "Oh, this is comfortable. I'm not going to learn to shudder here." And he sat there enjoying the heat of the fire, when suddenly he heard meow, meow, meow. And he looked and he saw two huge great black cats with great big eyes, red, staring at him. And he said, "You're not going to get warm sitting there. Come and sit by the fire." And the cats sat by the fire looking at him with their great eyes. And when they'd warmed up, he said, "Well, now you're warm, what now?" And the cats said, "Wow, will you play cards with us?" "Well, I don't see why not," said the youth. "But first of all, let me see your paws." And he took their paws and they spread out their long, sharp claws. And he said, "Those claws are too sharp for me to play cards with you." And with that, he cut them off. And then he cut off their heads and he threw them in the moat. With that, from all the corners of the room came lots of cats and dogs, black with gold chains round and eyes that were bright and wide and red with sparks coming out of them, and they ran round the room. And at first the youth, he didn't do anything. He just sat and watched them. But as they got more riotous and they started spreading the embers of the fire till they nearly put it out, he got up and he took his knife and he started fighting them all. And there was a few escaped, but mostly he killed every single one and threw their bodies in the moat. "Well," he said, "that was a night's work." And he stretched and he yawned and he said, "Oh, I'm so tired." And in the corner of the room was a bed, and oh, that looked like a comfortable bed. It was big and there was a fluffy quilt on it, and he went and he laid down. And no sooner had he laid down than that bed, it up and it galloped round the castle. It galloped round on its 4 legs as fast as it could go. And he said, "Call that speed?" And with that, the bed redoubled its efforts, and it went as if 6 horses were pulling it. It went right down to the castle gate, and it turned upside down, and it dumped him upside down with the bed on top. And after a great effort, he pulled himself out from under the bed, and he said, "Well, I don't think I'll be sleeping there for the night," and took himself back to his fire and the hearth, and he lay down on the floor and went to sleep. And in the morning, the king came in and saw him on the floor, and he saw and he said, "Oh," he thought he was dead. And he said, "Oh, what a shame, what an end for a handsome youth." And as the king said that, the boy woke up and he said, "No, I'm not dead." And he said, "Well, did you learn anything?" He said, "Well, I didn't learn how to shudder." And he told the king everything that had happened. And he went back to the inn, and the innkeeper said, "Well, I never expected to see you again." And the boy said, "Well, I've still got 2 more nights to go."
The second night came, and the youth made his way back to the castle. He went into the castle and found his way back to his bench by the fire and waited. He waited until it got late, and as he waited, he heard a rumbling and tumbling noise coming from the fireplace. And the noise got louder and louder until with a shriek, half of a man fell into the fireplace. "That's not really enough. Only half a man. You need 2 halves for a man." And as he spoke, the noise of rumbling and tumbling came again from the fireplace, and then the second half of a man fell into the fireplace. "That's much better," said the youth. "Why don't I just stoke the fire for you, make you warm?" And he went over to the fire and started to stoke. And with that, the two halves of the man came together and got up and moved over and sat on the youth's seat. "That's not part of the deal," said the youth. "That's my bench." And with that, he gave the man a great shove, and he pushed him and sat down. He hadn't been sat down long when, with even more rumbling and tumbling sounds from the fireplace, came more men into the room. And with these men, they brought 9 dead men's leg bones and 2 skulls. And the men said to each other, "We shall play ninepins." "Can I play?" said the youth. "If you have some money," said the men. "I have some money, enough indeed. But first, give me your balls." And he took the 2 skulls and he placed them onto his lathe, and he turned them until they were perfectly round. "There," he said, "that's much better. We can play properly now." And with that, they played a game of ninepins. The youth didn't do too badly, but he did lose a bit of money. And he played until the hour of 12 struck. And on that last chime of the clock, they all disappeared from sight. "Oh," the boy sighed. Fun over, he sat down on the bed and then lay down and then fell asleep. In the morning, the king came to see how he got on. And the king said to him, "Well, how was it? Did you learn to shudder?" And the youth said, "Well, it was well enough. I had a good game of ninepins." "But did you learn to shudder?" said the king. "No," said the youth. "I still didn't learn to shudder, but I did have a good time though." Well, the third night came, and the youth went back to the castle, and again he sat by the fire, and again he waited. And before long, as the night got late, this time the door opened, and in through the door came 6 men. 6 men dressed in black, carrying a coffin. And the youth said, "Ah, my little son, who died just a few days ago. Please come." And he beckoned, and the men brought and laid the coffin by his feet. The youth lifted up the coffin lid, and there was his cousin. And he called to his cousin to get up. But of course, the corpse just lay there silent. He reached down and touched his cousin's face, and it was icy cold. "Ah," he said, "you need warming." And he went to the fire and warmed his hands by the fire until they were toasty hot, and laid them again on the cheeks of his cousin. But his cousin never moved. "Maybe you need more warmth." And with that, he lifted the body out of the coffin and laid it by the fire, and started to rub his cousin's limbs. He rubbed his arms and his legs and stroked his cheeks, but still the body never moved. And then the boy had a brainwave, and he remembered that if 2 people were to lie in a bed together, then they would warm each other. And so he took the corpse and he laid it on the bed, lay down beside him, covered themselves over, and lay there. And as he lay there, so the body beside him grew warm from his own body heat, and indeed started to stir, and then at last sat up. And the youth turned to his cousin and said, "See, I've brought you back to life." But his cousin just turned and said, "And now I shall strangle you." "Well," said the youth, "if that's all the thanks I get, then you can get back into your coffin." And with that, he picked him up, threw him into the coffin, closed the lid and nailed it shut. And with that, The 6 men came in, picked the coffin up and carried him out. The youth sat down by the fire again. He hadn't been sat down very long when the door opened again. But this time came in a tall old man, looking more terrible than he'd ever seen. He had a long white beard almost down to his knees. "Now," said the old man, "is your turn to die." "Not so quick," said the youth, "because I think I shall be stronger than you." "We shall see," said the old man. "Come with me." And he took the youth down some stairs, down into the cellar. And in the cellar were 2 anvils and 2 axes. And the old man took one axe, and he heaved that axe and split the first anvil almost in 2. "That's not bad," said the youth, "but I can do better. Here, come." And he took the other axe, and with his axe he cleaved the second anvil until it was all but a fraction in 2. But as he swung his axe, he'd also grabbed the beard of the old man and wedged it into the cut that his axe had made, jamming it firmly into the V of the cut, and then stood on the end of the beard so the old man could not move. And then he leaned over, took an iron bar and started to beat the old man until he begged for his very life. "Why should I spare you?" said the youth. "Because if you do," said the old man, "then I shall give you riches. I shall show you riches more than you'd ever have dreamt possible." "Very well," said the youth. And with that he stepped off the old man's beard, pulled it from the anvil and said, "Show me." And the old man, of course, had to be good to his word. And he took him through to a second room. And there were 3 great chests of gold. And he said to him, "Here, the first is for the poor, the second is for the king, and the third is for you." And with that, the hour of midnight struck again, and the apparition disappeared, and he was left in total darkness. "Well," he thought, "I'll have to feel my way out of here." And so he felt his way round past the great gold chests of gold, found his way to the door, back to the stairs, back up into his room, and by the firelight he could see his bed, where he went over, laid down, feeling very pleased with himself, fell asleep.
And the king came in the next morning, and of course he found the young man alive and well, and he was pleased. And he said, "Did you learn to shudder?" And the boy said, "Well, no, I didn't learn to shudder, but look, I have these 3 chests of gold, one for you, one for me, and one for the poor." And the king, well, he was well pleased. And he said, "Well, you have broken the enchantment on the castle, so this means that you must marry my daughter." And so the young couple were married. And it would be nice to say that they were happy. And I suppose they were happy, but the boy, he kept complaining. "Oh, if only I'd learnt to shudder. Gosh, it would have been so much better if I'd learnt to shudder." And the prince, I suppose we must call him a prince by this time, I'm afraid he quite angered the princess. She was getting fed up with this. So she decided, she talked to her maid, and the maid and her, they got together and they made a plan. And so one day, while he was fast asleep in bed, the princess went down to the river with a big bucket. And she went into the river and she caught lots and lots of gudgeons, which are small fish. And she took the bucket back up to where he lay fast asleep, and she pulled back the bedclothes and poured the bucket over him. And he leapt out the bed going, oh, at last, I'm learning how to shudder. Oh, that is wonderful. And so at last he learnt to shudder, and the princess and he lived long and happily, for the boy had learnt to shudder, but not how to fear.